you to this first LinkedIn event, audio event of ours. And my co-host and speaker is my esteemed friend and top podcast host, Tom Reaoch. He's joining us live from Brazil. And we already do a bi-weekly live show, India-Brazil Business Chat with Tom and Ajay. And therein we explore together our nation's journeys in business, culture, and politics, as well as podcasting as we strive to find our rightful place in the global arena. So, Tom is joining us live from Campinas, Brazil. He has spent his whole life there, an American known in Brazil as the king of multicultural communication and networking. And with a wealth of experience in market development and product management across diverse businesses, Tom is the founder and host of 3 business podcasts, a public speaker. He's also an author, and his deep expertise and extensive network will provide invaluable insights into what we are talking about. He is one of the top global podcast hosts. So welcome to the show, Tom. Welcome to each one of you, Ricardo, Joa, Shweta, all of you. So over to you, Tom. We'll be discussing about the power of podcasts. But first, just to welcome you so that you can speak a few words, and then we'll get straightway into the discussion.
Well, AJ, thanks again for inviting me to this event. And for those listening to us, AJ and I consider AJ a business friend, a business partner, and we've never met each other in real life. We've talked hundreds of times, we've podcasted together, and he's one, as many who are listening right now, one of my many virtual persons, virtual context. And as we've evolved in our life, we have more virtual connections than we have face-to-face connections. And that brings us to why we're here. Why are we talking the power of podcasts and also the advantages of audio versus video? Because I'm a podcaster, AJ's a podcaster. We have vast experience in that. But very briefly, for those who don't know me, I am an American. I was born in the United States, in Pittsburgh, in 1947. So have had a long, prosperous life. I've been in Brazil for more than 50 years. But why is audio? Why do I think podcasting is important? Why do I think the audio portion is important? How did that come about? Well, when I was 8 years old, I delivered newspapers in Pittsburgh. And what was delivering newspapers? I was delivering content. And that content was made by others, and it was in the form of a newspaper, and I would deliver that content to people. And what happened, most of those people would take their newspaper, read the newspaper, but they would also turn on their radio and listen to the news on the radio. So that was a habit back then. You would listen to the news, and if you wanted more in-depth coverage of what was covered on the news programs, you would read the newspaper. An old concept, but that concept has evolved and continues to today. And we see that on internet. We click on a link, and that link will take us to more links and to more information. So, that was the power of audio. During my times of delivering newspapers, I really had a short period of time to talk to people. It was a networking event. It was my business. I delivered newspapers. I made money. So I learned interaction with people. But how do you make your mark? And as I evolved, and even in the States at that time, the radio, audio, was still the communication. Sporting events, it was the news channels. Everybody had their radio and listened to the radio. When I came to Brazil 20-some years later, when I first landed in Brazil, I didn't speak Portuguese. So how did I learn Portuguese? I listened to the local radio stations. I listened to Portuguese-speaking radio, and I read Portuguese language newspapers. So I heard the language, saw the language, and started learning, acclimated myself. And that's a way of learning today. That led me, and my, again, general feeling, because I had a radio. You could have radios anywhere. You walked around with your radio at that time. In your automobile, you had radios. So as that evolved, and later here in Campinas, I was invited to be a commercial radio host on a local radio program called Manhã Bandeirantes. So it was a morning talk show on radio, live. And there I learned the art of interviewing, an art of interviewing live by audio, to listeners of the radio who would dial in, ask questions or make comments or whatever. So it was a 20-minute program once a week, and I did that for 2 years. So that's where I learned the back office. How do you produce? How do you create? And how do you maintain interest in an audience and listeners that you don't see, you don't know, and how do you attract them to continue listening? And my point of conversations during that talk show, I would talk about business in general, career transition or career development, networking, business opportunities in the area of Campinas and the world. So I did that for 2 years. Later, when internet radio became popular in the United States, I created my first internet radio program called Talk to Brazil. And it was the world's first internet radio program in English about business in Brazil. And that internet radio station was in Los Angeles. So I created English language content about business in Brazil, which generated in Los Angeles. I interviewed people all over the world. And again, evolving with my virtual connections, generating content and business-focused, business-centric information. The natural evolution of internet radio is when podcasting as a format became popular several years ago. So I transitioned Talk to Brazil to the podcast format. And that allowed me, and allows podcasters, to adjust your agenda, your time length, your focus to your own, and you become a one-man business, a one-person business. And I could administer it by myself. So that's when I restarted Talk to Brazil as a podcast. Second, I created a second podcast, which is BBN Brazil, the same interviewing format, but in Portuguese, and more directed to a Brazilian audience, talking about the same thing, business, networking opportunities, and generating content that could be heard, that could be downloaded. And today, my third podcast is Cafe Networking, also in English. And as AJ mentioned, we share a chat where both of us talk together every 15 days about business opportunities in India and Brazil, generating content, transmitting content, and developing that. But when we look at podcasting and we look at audio, we need to look at it in several dimensions. So what I will be saying today and have said, the first dimension is a podcaster. So I am a professional that creates a podcast. I have a platform. I interview persons. So that second dimension is the podcast guest, that person that I'm interviewing. That also has the content. That's the content I will share. The third dimension is a podcast audience, a person who wants to listen to the podcast and listen to the guest and follow what we've said and eventually find that person later for more in-depth learning or understanding. And obviously there is another dimension, which are the sponsors and partners. So sponsors who want to sponsor my program or help me or have me promote their products, services, whatever, they're also looking to the content that I create, the audience that we reach. And in partnership is what AJ and I have done. We've taken that to another dimension of taking his podcast, my podcast, and how do we melt that together in another unique experience. And when we talk about audio and video, I break it down into two other points. What I try to do in my podcast are directed towards, I would say, education, transmitting content, and hoping that persons will learn from that and reshare it. When we talk about the video, and when we see things, and we're seeing movies, we're seeing the videos today, music, that's generally thought as being entertainment. I don't want to say that my podcasts aren't entertaining, they could be, but the direction is education. And to that point is listening. And that's what we're doing today. That's where the persons following us today, AJ, they're listening. They may be doing something else even while they're listening. That's the advantage of an audio podcast that we've come to learn. So in a nutshell, in a big nutshell, that's where I am today professionally after 70-some years from selling and delivering newspapers. to podcasting from my studio in Brazil.
Absolutely, absolutely, and uh, and before I hope I'm audible, Tom.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay, because system is saying you are on mute, so I got confused. To tell everybody, this is my first LinkedIn audio. Though on podcast, on live podcast, I've done more than 600, but I am also, as anxious as anyone starting out. So on LinkedIn, this is the first one LinkedIn audio. Though I've done many on LinkedIn video. So if there are any questions, thank you very much first to Ricardo, Joa, Sweta, Ben, and everyone else, Anmol. And this is got hidden, so I cannot see anyone's name. But thank you very much to each one of you. And if there is any question, anything that comes to your mind, you want to join us on the stage, please feel free to do so, because we are just talking like friends. And as Tom was telling about his story, the power of podcast is such, the power of audio is such that we are able to talk from with each other from different corners of the world. I met Tom through this very medium, and this has helped us, build something. Even what we do every fortnight is India Brazil business chat, and that even though it has got less number of viewers or listeners, but in terms of its reach, it is going to many places. And recently, one of our episode was featured in another website which got more than 6,000 reads and all. So that shows that the power of. And now we have got that whole concept of video podcasting. As you can see, the industry is evolving so fast. Earlier, YouTube was more into video. Now it has come into audio. And then if you see Spotify, it was pure on audio. Now it is also on video. So everyone is trying to, get into the thick of things, giving the audience a lot of options. And within these options, we have got a lot of free options for each one of us. Either we are a freelancer in terms of business, in terms of a guest, in terms of an expert, whatever we are doing, we can utilize everything from video to audio to whatever we may want to podcast, whatever way we want to call it. But this is the power of podcasting. This is the power of technology to reach the last person, the audience, or your consumer, customer, whoever it is. And it is such a wonderful medium to connect. That is what we wanted to talk about. And in terms of those people who are into podcasting, recently Pod Pros, they came out with a Pod Pros podcast report, and they talked about actively established podcaster. Tom, if you can talk a bit more about, actively established podcaster. Who is this? How it is going to benefit? And, how is it putting things into a particular category?
Well, let me take advantage of that. And as you said on Pods Pro, they have come with this recent survey. What do they consider as an actively established podcaster? An actively established podcast is defined as an interview-based podcast with at least 100 episodes and a release cadence of 10 days or less that's run by a host who isn't a celebrity or part of a major media network. And that's us, AJ. So we have generated more than 100 episodes. We release an episode probably almost daily. And within that 10-day, we don't consider ourselves celebrities. And we're not part of major media networks, because all of the major media networks worldwide, here in Brazil and everywhere else, they have also migrated to podcast. All of them have a podcast. They take their news program, transform it into a podcast, and actually retransmit, repurpose their content. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. That's just not where we are. We're independent, active podcasters. And that's who we're speaking to today. And in my past, and I can see part of our audience today, and I do want to cite two of those, Ricardo Joa and also Alex Fozel, both who I know here from Brazil, both executives, persons who have been in business, they've been around the world. I have to say, I'm not really sure where they are right now. Ricardo could be in Florida. Alex could be in Pittsburgh. We're also speaking to people right now from India and other parts. So what does podcasting bring? It brings reach. It gives us reach. It gives the content reach. When I first started as a consultant, one of the things that I was told is that you need to write a book. You need to have a book. And you put that content, you will be considered an expert. And then how would you increase your reach with a book? You have to have people buy it. And you have to sell it in various places. So that's the marketing aspect. Today, I almost say to the same persons, you need to either have a podcast or you need to be a podcast guest. You need to be interviewed by AJ or myself or somebody else and literally talk about what you do, how you do it. And back to Ricardo and Alex, they're persons that the evolution of professionals today is ongoing. As I said, I started delivering newspapers. I was a business executive. I've had my own company. I've evolved in a number of different professions through my life. But what was one of the basic things that I needed to do and all business persons need to do? They need to learn how to communicate. And they need to learn how to reach and extend that communication, that content, either to clients, either to business partners, associates. And that's probably the toughest part of being in business. Many of us, and I was in my past, a technical expert in something. But I had to learn how to communicate that. I had to learn how to communicate in two different languages. You, AJ, where you are in India, we're talking about multilingual experiences. India is chock full of languages. So the art of creating the content and reaching, that comes to all of us today as business persons. How do we reach? If we let's take LinkedIn, where we are all right now. LinkedIn, obviously, is talking about network. It is a business-centric platform. Thought of many times of when I need to find a job or find a customer, which both are true. But LinkedIn has become a learning center. LinkedIn has become a content creation point. And it's a platform that we as business persons, those listening right now, can create, transmit, and extend their reach globally. And I know Ricardo and Alex both know that. You know the dimension. You know the dimension of the world. I just want to make sure you're hearing me because I keep getting a message that I'm muted.
Right, Tom.
That's all coming through.
One thing, right, Tom. Are you getting me again?
Yes, I can hear, but I keep getting this message that I'm mute.
Right. Sorry for. I am always very, concerned whether I'm audible or not. In video, at least you can see. So that is where everyone has their own way of looking. All the options are there. So and in fact, I would like to point out, me and Tom are totally, different podcasters in our different ways. Actually, I am much more of a spontaneous person. I don't really bother much about what my quality of equipment is. I generally use my laptop. For many of my podcasts, I've used pure laptop mic itself. People will not like that. People will not agree to that. But for me, it was difficult for me to figure out what to actually use. I thought, why not just get into the thick of things and, fine tune things as you go along. But Tom, you have a lot of experience in radio and a lot about equipment. So I would obviously not want other people to follow the way I do things. But one thing I just want to tell them, whether you are a business person, podcaster, whoever it is, do not worry about too many things at the same time. Just get into it. Phone itself has a very good mic. Start talking and start taking your ideas to the world and then fine tune. If you just to look at everything external, you will not be able to share your things. But at the same time, you don't have to, neglect all the fine aspects of podcasting, whether video podcasting or audio podcasting. So, Tom, because you have got such a great idea about audio, you've got a huge experience in radio. Can you tell us some fine points that, whoever it is who is getting into podcasting, especially in terms of audio, what shit they should take care about, whenever they are talking to their audience?
I want to take the point that you mentioned. Where did I start and how did I start back with Talk to Brazil and Internet Radio? I had my laptop. What I did invest in was a headset that had a microphone. It was a USB. I plugged it in, and that was it. What I did need was a reasonable internet connection and a stable internet connection. And we still need that today. So in 2009, when I started, that's how I started. So actually generating the interviews through my laptop. The internet radio station was LA Talk Radio. They were in Los Angeles. And all of our interviews were created and generated through something that most of us have probably forgotten, was something called Skype. And Skype was a technology at that time that permitted to generate an interview in distance. So I would be in Brazil interviewing a person in Germany, and that would be going through a sound table in Los Angeles. And we had a sound technician there who would connect the three of us actually on Skype, and it was a Skype call. And the quality was reasonable. I don't want to say it was perfect, but it was the best available. And the technology that Skype used was a lot of technology what I personally don't understand, of how to clean up background sounds and how to clean up sounds in general. So that was the start. Radio quality, and we here, as a radio listener, we have our handheld radios, all right? Even today, here in Brazil, people go to a sporting event. In the States, same thing. And they have a radio up to their ear. They're watching a game, but they're listening. They're watching an automobile race, but they're listening to somebody transmit that. And that quality, because of the sound, could be good or bad, but it's acceptable. To podcasting and the content that we are creating, what we are doing now, I have also come and learned that what we deliver it should be quality sound. People will tend to listen longer if they understand that that sound that they are hearing is agreeable. All right, it's not offensive. All right, and hopefully it's relaxing in the sense that it gives people time, but it's a mental connection. They're listening, but they also have to contemplate what is being said and possibly interact. So the more we can reduce any static background sounds, the more quality we can offer in that sound, the better. And that's just the deliverable. That's what we deliver. And you know, AJ, as I do, most of our guests, when we interview, they're not set up for a quality audio event. And they're not set up many times even for a video event. So we've gone through the pandemic, everybody, and we've seen lives have come on and people generating content in any way. I've done many podcasts through WhatsApp, through my cell phone. And I have to say they were reasonable quality. Were they the best? No. But I could take my handheld phone, put in my earphones, interview somebody on their phone, and if they had a headset or earplugs, it was reasonable quality. Many of the executives that I've interviewed in the past, they were in a car, they were doing something. It was hard to line up people. So we do have to understand that quality is important. But to your point, get started. Just do it. And the handheld devices that we have, which is called a smartphone, a phone, that's all the technology that any of us really need as a business person. And we've been using that. We use that on a call. We use that amongst our employees, our customers, our friends. So it's just learning that. The biggest hurdle that we all have comes to public speaking is being able to speak. The second hurdle is continuity. Because there are millions of podcasts, but there are only hundreds of thousands of podcasts that have continuity, that have reached 3 episodes. So to those interested in starting a podcast, you really have to think past the 8th or 10th episode. What content are you going to be able to create and able to generate for at least 10 episodes before you get started? Because the vast majority end on 1 episode. They can do it, the technology's there, the sound quality is reasonable. You can go out and buy a reasonably priced microphone and headset for $100. The sound connection, I have I would say a pro quality setup here, but you don't need that. But it's not the equipment, it's the content. How do you keep generating? How can I generate? And I have 250 interviews on Cafe Networking is one of my podcasts. It's finding those persons, finding those experts that have content that could be shared and wants to be shared. And people want to listen. So that's the other side. Who wants to listen to what we say? To that point on audio, how are we found? I say to my guests that we are generating, and right now, we are generating voice searchable content. We know today that everything that we said is being captured, is being transcribed, and it's being indexed. So artificial intelligence out there is working. What we say will be transcribed and registered somewhere. So it's the words that we say and how we say those that are important. And this is where we are today. We have to keep speaking because that's going to be transcribed. That's going to be indexed in our favor. So the thing is, get started. Just go.
Right. Thank you for that, Tom. And any questions from anyone, please feel free to raise your hand and tell us, and we will be able to ask, or you come onto the stage. So now the question is about, as the topic says, the power of podcast. What is the power of podcast, and where does the power lie? Does it lie in the equipment? Does it lie in the medium, whether audio or video? If you look at this particular part, audio or video, you will get hundreds of articles talking about the benefits of one thing or the other. The one way I can see it is that the video one can be converted into audio, but the audio one today also can be converted into video in a different. There are so many tools, especially with the artificial intelligence coming in. But to me, if you ask where is the power of podcasting, where does this audio, the power lies? Earlier, if you look, when everything was starting up, people used to say medium is the message. You be on television, you are seen, people will not notice more. They will look at what you said, but exactly you were there. So if you are on a particular medium, it means you must have said something important. And then there were the surge of so many channels and so many mediums across the world. Today, we have got many mediums, so many podcasters are there everywhere. But the challenge is that who is listening to whom? And that is where, again, I ask, where is the power of podcast, whether it is audio or video? The podcast power is not in the equipment that you use, in the many a times you just talk, that is also not there. But the power, in my opinion, lies in creating connections.
Right.
And that is the actual power. I did not know Tom. Today I know him. We know each other very, very well now, but we have never met. And we do a show every fortnight. We do a show. We have already rolled out 7 episodes, and we have come out to this particular podcast event. You see the tuning, apart from me fumbling here and there. We are able to communicate each other right now, even though we are not able to, see each other. That is the power of connection, that whether audio or video podcast is there. Ben Gold is here. He is going to be my guest on my video podcast very soon, live podcast. So that is the power of connection. And many of you who are listening to this That is the power of connection. Otherwise, we would be never able to reach each other. This is the power. If you take the gist of audio podcast or video podcast, that is going to impact your businesses, impact who you are.
Right.
Even I used to, if I come from a television background, news background. I started with Reuters. My last job in media was full-fledged job was with CNBC India. So coming into from that particular background, I still am conscious about a few things. I still am, but in spite of whatever fumbles you make, whatever you do, the main important point is that you are able to connect with people. That connection is what you take home at the end of the day. That is, if you start with that, you will find that every interaction, whatever the medium is, it becomes such a lovely interaction that no other place will be able to give you. And the way the world is changing, with so much of distance between people, even in offices, we are afraid to walk to each other and talk. People want to write everything. Whenever they are talking, they want to keep a record of this. WhatsApp, we are keeping all those millions and millions of messages saved. Not needed of that. That is so much of distrust. Amidst all these things, this power of, the podcast provide you to have that open chat, be vulnerable, be you are, and your guests also will be, as open as you are. And that is where it creates connection. That it creates lifetime connection. This is what I feel. I know these are my thoughts, but I just thought I will share with them. And this is where, in my opinion, lies the power of podcast. If any of you have their own words, they can speak out. To you, Tom, to share on this particular aspect of power of podcast.
Well, I want to get back to the word that I said, reach, and what does podcasting bring to us, bring to any podcaster. When I referred to my time in the radio station here in Campinas, what was the reach of that radio station? That reach was maybe 100-kilometer radius around the city of Campinas, and that really depended on the power of the transmission tower and the quality even of the weather that day, is how far that reach could be and where people could listen. And even listening in the car, we would drive from one city to another and we would lose a connection. So that reach, maintaining the reach, the reach to get there, but to maintaining it. What we have today in podcasting, that reach has been extended and it's global. And very shortly we'll say that it's planetary. Those persons, and I know Alex knows that fly around the world on occasion, that with internet inside the airplane today, you're able to follow podcasts, obviously television, other types of programs, but you can pick up and listen to your favorite podcast anywhere while you're flying, which in the past, and not too long ago, that was unheard of. So my reach when I delivered newspapers when I was 8 was the extension of a couple blocks that I could walk and deliver that newspaper. And in Brazil, the radio program was that reach. Today, with the internet radio program, I started to reach the world. And that was my objective. I wanted to generate content about Brazil in English as a place for business opportunities. And that happened. I became, let's say, a unique person in generating content that reached the world. Today, literally, with my podcast, and this is funny when I say that, 10% of my audience for my podcast comes from India, AJ. I mentioned that to you. And I said, India, why? People are listening anywhere. People can listen. And if I look through my statistics, I have listeners from at least 70 different countries throughout the world. Are there thousands of them in each one of those countries? No. But I've reached a person or persons in at least 70 different countries. My guests who have been on my podcast, I've extended that reach to them. They have been heard. All right. What I say, the robots and bots from the search engines, they hear everything and they retransmit that because now it's all being indexed. And artificial intelligence keeps extending our reach in many ways that we thought unimaginable. So the important thing is to generate the content, to have something that you could say and be ongoing, that people want to listen. Business experiences throughout the world, I don't say they're all the same, but they're very similar. Networking opportunities, are they the same? There are cultural differences, but people like to meet people. People like to hear people. They like to talk to people. They like to be with people. And we should never forget that our clients are people. And that client could be extended in a number of different ways. Who is our client? Who is our client, AJ? We're talking to listeners that we probably will never, ever see in our life. But that just keeps me going because I know that I'm reaching more people that I can physically reach. And that's not a secret. So anyone wanting to either create a podcast or be a podcast guest, it's the way to go at the moment. Can things be different in the future? Obviously, everything changes. But content is still king. Transmitting that is back to what you said. It's mechanical. It's electronic. But you need to have something to say and people who want to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is where, so each one can discover connections, discover, the power of podcasting the way they want to. It is like, it is up to you. And you can go to any extent that you want to. I started live streaming last year of January. When I started, I thought, okay, let me try it out and then I will see how it goes. And after 700 podcasts, I don't know about how much others have benefited, but it has brought a lot of different aspects that I've learned myself, and that is the biggest thing that I see. It has helped me, in so many aspects of whatever I do, not in terms of just podcasting, but everything else beyond podcasting. And as you discover more about these things, when you start talking to people, or either in video or audio, you will discover that you have fine-tuned your own thoughts, fine-tuned your own product or service, fine-tune the way you are talking to people, how you are explaining your own services, how you have become the catalyst in everything. So that is where, that you talked about our clients. Maybe sometimes we are not talking to our clients, but our guests, they are talking to their clients, and so many of them. And that enables them to talk to, as you say, talk to Tom, talk to the world. So if anyone talks to you, they have the opportunity to talk to whoever they are trying to reach out. This is the power of, podcast in whatever way. So, so to sum it up, that each one must try to look at this particular medium, whether it is podcast, marketing, people say in whatever way you want to tell it, but this is one medium which will connect you to many, many people anywhere in the world. And so thank you very much, Joe, Shweta, Ben, Anmol, Alex, so many people, Anastasia. Some things have got hidden by this whole thing, and I don't know how to put that out. This is my first one, but I'll be learning this. So this I've learned today. This is the big achievement for me. Tom, any closing remark, and then we'll, it's time. We'll end this up.
Well, what I say is that live and learn, be heard, and be found.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know how much value we have created. Tom, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about myself. I don't know how much value in that sense we have created. But one thing I just want to end up with is that it is nice that we have been able to connect. And in this fleeting thing called life, it is nice to get connected with so many wonderful people here at the same time. And this is, I take it as the final points for myself, the gist of everything as of today. And the next time we talk, we will not be strangers. We'll be someone who has met at some place called the LinkedIn Audio. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition, the first edition of our Power of Podcast, Audio and Video with Tom and Ajay. Next time, we'll come up with something different, something new, something much more which will help us understand this